Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about 3-1 truck skip. It's one of the biggest skip in the game, at least known so far. So the main idea is we're going to skip the long road that like has the truck carrying the logs that you're supposed to avoid, and these truck that will throw logs at you, and depending whether it's a high pattern or low pattern, you're supposed to avoid it accordingly. But yeah, that section is just too long, and you cannot dash while waiting behind the truck. So it's about 15 seconds time loss compared to like if you skip it. So first of all, I'm going to show you how it looks like, and then we're going to go into the details of the timings and stuff to skip it. So yeah, let's go. Let me show you first of all how it looks. Oops. So it's located here after the first checkpoint in 3-1. So yeah, it's something like that. So basically, yeah, you can see the idea that we're trying to intentionally get hit and then abuse the iframes. While the iframe is still active, you try to dash through the truck, and then the iframe is, I wouldn't say frame perfect, but yeah, it's a bit tight, but it's enough for us to push through the truck and then yeah, just go in front of the truck, and then you can dash through the rest of the road without any problem, right? Without even worrying for anything. So first of all, I'm going to cover is the movement of brake. So you know that if you press square and up, Pepsi Man will dash faster. You might or might not know that the opposite is also true, where if you press square and down, Pepsi Man will actually slow down, will actually like brake for a bit. And this is an important movement to execute this skip, as you will see soon. So yeah, of course I get hit by that motorcycle. So yeah, if you see at my input there on the lower left, oops, watch with the like that. Square and down actually brake, and this is useful not just to execute this skip, but generally, because as you see, if I get hit here, I cannot, even if I press square and up, I cannot dash instantly, right? There's a bit moment where I cannot dash. Whereas if you brake and then immediately you can immediately dash after you brake. So let me show you once again. So after I got hit there, if I do brake for a very short while, even if I mean to save most time, you just brake for a very short time, because even after a very short time, you can immediately dash after that. So you want to only brake for a very small number of frames and then immediately dash after that. And that is critical to make sure that you have enough iframe to dash past through the truck. Because if you don't do that, then your iframe would have run out after you can dash. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, you want to be able to dash before your iframe runs out, right? That's the main idea. That's why you have to do the brake input, okay? And yeah, so you can actually practice doing this even not in 3-1. You can practice it anywhere. Try practicing this short brake and then immediately dash after you get hit by anything, not necessarily the truck in 3-1. So yeah, try getting hit by something and then do the brake for a very might not work at the start of the respawn, but yeah, try getting hit by something and then dash, brake and then dash immediately. So that's the one important piece to get the truck skip, right? So I think to make sure that you can already do that, there is actually a smaller skip in 4-1, so we can actually try look into that. I think I have the save state here. So we can actually try doing 4-1 truck skip first, which saves, I think, about 2 seconds. It's not as much as 15 seconds, of course, in 3-1, but it's still a time save, and it's easier to perform. So yeah, why it's easier is because you don't really need a complicated setup. You just try to get hit by the truck. You just push, you just dash through the truck and get hit by it, And even if you get hit earlier by the can, you can still perform it because, yeah, I'm not exactly sure why this is easier. I guess it's because the length of the truck is shorter, so the hitbox is smaller, so that you have more window to execute this trick basically. I might have messed up there actually. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, try practicing this like short break and then immediately dash to it. Okay, let's do it one more time. Okay. So again, this skip does not really require any setup. Just dash through the truck. Even if you got hit earlier by the cans, it's fine. Because again, this you have more frames here to execute this this skip. See, the only time when this doesn't work is if the hit animation is a bit unlucky and you get rolled back. Sometimes it happens. I don't exactly know when you get it and when you don't. But sometimes the hit animation is bad that you get rolled backwards like this, right? So you notice that the hit animation rolls me backward more than the previous one. In this case, you actually got rolled behind enough that it's hard to execute. Yeah, it's close to impossible actually. But as long as you don't get that hit animation, this truck skip is actually quite easy to execute. So you can just practice on this level first. So yeah, if you got that hit animation, you see that it's a short hit animation, so you can regain control faster and you don't get rolled back as the worst animation. So yeah, it's actually not hard to execute this skip, right? So try to practice on this level first. Once you can master like breaking for a very short time and immediately dash after that, and manage to be able to skip this truck, then yeah, you can try the harder one, which is the 3-1, right? Okay, so let's I can go through one more here, and then we can go through 3-1. So again, without any complicated setup, just dash through the truck, and then when you got hit, break for short frames and then immediately dash after that, right? Okay, now let's talk about, once you can do that, now let's try to do the 3-1, which has bit of a more complicated setup to do. Okay, let's go back to the save stage and try to do 3-1. I messed up my movements. Shouldn't have done that. Sorry. Let me try again. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Okay, should be good now. Okay, coming up to the first checkpoint, let me just create a save state here. Okay. Okay, first of all, let me show you why this is more complicated. It's because if we just dash through the truck, yeah, the truck will actually gain enough distance. So this is actually harder to execute than for this one, because yeah, like if you just dash through the truck, the iframe won't be enough. Like by the time you do the short break and the dash thing, the truck have already gained enough distance that by the time you reach the truck, the iframe will have run out, right? So you have to get a very specific hit animation that is very short so that you can regain control as fast as possible. That's the main idea, and that's what makes this setup, this 3-1 skip a bit difficult, because there is a bit of setup compared to 4-1, where any kind of hit animation except that very bad one kind of works for 4-1. But in 3-1, you have to get a very specific hit animation. I can show you. I actually didn't get hit that time. That's not the hit animation that I want. Yeah, so this is the hit animation that I want. That Pepsi Man just like crouch a bit and hold his head. And this hit animation is very short that when I regain control of Pepsi Man, the truck has not gained enough distance. I hope that makes sense, right? So if I got hit by this animation and immediately there's sorry, I messed up a bit there because of the pause. Let me try again and make sure I get that hit animation and do the brake and the dash, right? Okay, so that's the hit animation that we have to get. And now let's talk about how do we get that hit animation. So there are many ways of doing this. I see other runners have different setup, but I'm going to talk about my setup, my visual cues that works best for me. So yeah, so basically the way that I do is I start my setup from this point. So you see that there is I use the lines at the middle of the road as my cues, just like when you're driving, I guess. Yeah, so just before the road goes turn right, there is a at the how to explain this? I use the end of the last line before the turn, right? So let me show again. So yeah, you know these lines are still straight, and then this is the last line before it turns, right? So at the end of that line, I dash. I press the dash input, and then I know that almost at the end of my dash, there will be one lock that is thrown into me. Just because where I set up my dash, I know that approximately halfway or through the end of my dash, there will be one lock that is thrown against me, and I have to do a full jump. The reason I do a full jump is just because the setup is more consistent. And also, if the lock thrown to me happens to be a high lock, I need to do a full jump to avoid it. And I avoid it by jumping over the lock. I hope it makes sense, right? So what I do is, let me show you once again. So at the end, you see, at the end of that line, maybe I shouldn't dash earlier. So here I dash, and then when the lock gets thrown into me, I do a full jump. That way, it's more consistent where I land, and it's also consistent that I can avoid that lock, right? So yeah, so that is the first two steps, I guess. Dash at the end of the last line before the turn, and then when the lock gets thrown to me, do a full jump. By full jump, I mean like press the jump button as long as you can. Basically, do not release it, right? Just do a full jump, right? And then what I do is at the end of the jump, so when I land, I do a half jump. And this is where it's not as consistent because like half, you can't really measure it. But yeah, do not so full jump. Just press the X button a bit lightly, right? And then, yeah, by doing those two jumps, so first dash and then do a full jump, the full jump makes it more consistent where I land and also avoids the lock that I need to avoid. After the full jump, I do half jump. So by doing that 3 steps, dash, full jump, and half jump, I usually land in the exact distance that I want to from the truck, right? So, okay, so let me show once again. So I do dash, full jump, and half jump. So right now I'm in the correct distance as I want to be from the truck, because to execute this trick, to make sure that I got that hit animation that I want, you have to be close to the truck but not very close, which for the reason that I'm going to show you why. So yeah, you have to be at this distance to the truck, and then when the truck is about to throw a lock, you have to do a brake input. I teach you how to do a brake input. Yeah, that's how you have to do to get the hit animation that you want. And if you are too close to the truck, so I mentioned that you have to be close to the truck but not too close. It's because if you are too close to the truck, you might actually avoid the lock. So like the lock might get over you, if that makes sense. Yeah, so you have to be close but not too close to the truck. And then when the truck is about to throw a lock, you do a brake input so that you get hit by the lock on the head. And then, yeah, Pepsi Man will get that hit animation that we need, right? And yeah, that's way too late. So dash, full jump, half jump, and then brake as the truck is about to throw a lock, right? And there is also another cue here, that visual cue that I use when I should brake to get hit by the lock. It's by the Pepsi can. So it's actually the Pepsi can is located just in a nice position that gives me a visual cue to brake. It's about when Pepsi Man is on that Pepsi can that the truck will throw a lock at me. So it's just nice because when I'm about at the same horizontal position as the Pepsi can, then I do a brake input. So I hope that makes sense. So let me show you again. So at the end of that line there, I dash, full jump, small jump, and when I'm approximately in line with that can, I messed up there, but yeah, you get the idea. When I'm in line with the can there, I do a brake input, and yeah, I should get at around the same time that lock should fall, and I should get hit by the lock and get the hit animation that I want. And then that's only half of the trick then, because that's only the setup. And then of course you have to nail the brake and dash trick almost perfectly. Yeah, so you don't have many frames to spare. So let me show you again. Okay, you have to do that, right? So yeah, so basically that's what I can share you. Like, that's my setup. Again, many other runners, if you watch them, they have different setups, but yeah, this is what I do. I start a run here, do a full jump, do a small jump, brake there, and yeah. When I say other runners have different setup, is like setup for like to get the same distance to the truck that I have. But once you have the same distance as the one that I showed you there, it's the same thing. You have to brake just before the truck throws a lock at you, and it's around the position where that one Pepsi can is, and then you get the same result. But the setup to get you to that correct distance to the truck, yeah, there are many different setups that you can use, but this is the setup that I use, and I feel pretty good about it. It's quite consistent for me, so I always do this. So at the end of this line, I dash, do a full jump, do a small jump, brake, and then yeah, execute this, of course, right? Okay, let me show you at the beginning of the level, so you can see me doing more of that setup, I guess. I messed up my movement again. Sorry about that. Okay. Maybe save here. Okay. So yeah, at the end of this line, dash, full jump, small jump, brake, and then dash, right? So yeah, that's how you do a 3-1 truck skip. Yeah, that's what happens if I get too close to the truck. Like, even if I brake there, the lock just go over my head. That is because I got too close to the truck. So yeah, we don't want to do that. Yep. So yeah. Okay. Messed up the jump there. Okay. Okay, yeah, and then again, of course, if you manage to do this, then you should be able to do the 4-1 truck skip as well, because it's way easier. So you will probably save about 15 seconds here and 2 seconds there in 4-1. So yeah, that's quite a lot of seconds. Okay, so that's all that I can share. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully you will be able to execute it and get a consistent strat, again, feel free to do whatever setup that fits you. I just share you my setup. Other runners have different setup. Yeah, feel free to play around with it, see which one suits you and consistent for you. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye bye.